Happy Women's Day, everyone. On this special day, we are here to interact with great women achievers who have done exceptionally well in their career. Diya Kapur Misra is one of them. She is an entrepreneur, a mother, and has worked with some best organizations. Welcome, Diya. Welcome to the show,
Thank you. Thanks, Shruti.
and a very happy Women's Day.
Yes, to you too.
Let's talk about you. Share your journey with us.
I started my career about 24 years back. I must admit, it doesn't feel like it was so long back, but it was. I started my career with Hindustan Unilever and went through the usual, 1 year of management traineeship and then was placed at a factory in Yavatmal in interior Maharashtra. That was the first interesting experience for a girl born and brought up in Delhi and always been, sort of used to big city life. It was quite a transition, but a phenomenal experience, both the management traineeship and the experience at the factory. From there, I moved on to another factory in Silvassa in Dadra and Nagar Haveli, worked there for some time with Unilever. I decided to marry somebody in the company and so made a personal choice to, take my career elsewhere. Um, and it was again the first realization that, fortunately or unfortunately, often it's the women who make choices like this more than the men. Moved on from there and I joined Hewitt, the HR consulting firm, which is today called Aon. I spent about 7.5 years with them. When I joined them, I was employee number 4 in the consulting practice. And by the time I left the company, there were more than 4,000 people. So in 7.5 years, it was quite a scale up. I would say I grew with the business and grew the business, and it was again a professionally a phenomenal experience. From there, I then took my first maternity break. I had my first daughter, who is now 16 years old. Took a break, and as a very ambitious career woman, I sort of thought that in 3 months of maternity leave, I would be back at work, but life often has different things in store. I realized in about 2 or 2.5 months that I just couldn't bear to leave that little baby and go back to work full time. So I ended up extended my maternity break and took 2 years off. And then when I got back to my job, I did not want to go back into consulting with a small infant. Didn't want that kind of travel, which consulting entails. Consulting was also going through a slump, so work was low, and it seemed like a good time to go back into a business role. At that stage, I joined Cadbury's, and I spent the next couple of years with Cadbury's, which was another phenomenal organization to work with. But that was probably one of the toughest phases of my life, going back post maternity and dealing with all that comes, as a part and parcel of that. I realized after a couple of years that I was really missing consulting because I love the variety of experiences that consulting offers. And so I went back into consulting and I joined Conferry as a partner in the leadership consulting practice. I joined them to set up the leadership consulting team and business in Bombay, and then spent the next few years with them. Professionally, in many ways, I think that was probably the highlight of my career. I was a slightly more experienced mother by then, so I was handling that better. I had a phenomenal team, and I think we did some really amazing work, built a great client pool and a very, very strong and robust business. Then I took my second maternity break. I had my second daughter, went almost dropped off the face of the earth because my second child was a premature baby. So she was 3 months premature and therefore in hospital for 3 months in the ICU. And it was obviously a fairly challenging period for all of us as a family. That passed. She's now a thriving 9.5-year-old, going to be 10 very soon. But it was a difficult phase personally, and therefore, the professional piece sort of took a back seat for a while. I came back to work then after that for a brief period to Conferry, and then decided to branch out on my own and start working for myself. And that is when about 7.5 years back, I set up my own proprietorship firm, which is in the leadership advisory and coaching space. And that's what I continue to do 7 years down. So that's kind of my journey, professional and personal, in a nutshell.
You have this massive experience. You've worked with some of the biggest brand. Hindustan Unilever is one of the biggest FMCG companies. Let's talk about the challenges. What kind of challenges did you face during the initial years in the industry?
The period that I'm talking about was a different era altogether. When I talk to younger people, I realize that, there's a huge shift, and thankfully so, which has taken place in the last 15 odd years. I'm talking about a phase. I joined Hindustan Unilever in 1999. And you will imagine that at that time, there were very few women joining, the workforce. And in the kind of places where I was in factories in very, very, I would say, sort of remote locations, it was even more rare. The experiences of being the only woman in many, many places was something that I had for the first time. Like I said, I was, a big city girl who'd grown up in Delhi, gone to Delhi University, then gone to XLRI Jamshedpur, where there was a decent gender ratio. And then I
Right.
suddenly found myself in situations where I would be one among 700 or 800 men and the only woman, and a young woman at that. One, interesting anecdote comes to my mind. I did my summer training with a very prominent paint company, and I was posted at their factory, again, one among 750 people, only woman on campus, including contract labor, Mathadi labor. They were all men, and it was me.
Right.
And I remember on my first day there, going through the orientation, there was a supervisor, manufacturing supervisor taking us through the orientation. There was me and there was a male colleague from one of the IIMs. And right through the whole day, this gentleman, the supervisor, talked only to my male colleague. Right, he never even looked at me or acknowledged my presence. And I realized that it was simply because he was really socially uncomfortable dealing with a woman. He'd probably never had a woman in his workplace. So that I, kind of took in my stride, and that was fine. And at one point, after explaining the paint process and, the manufacturing process, etc., he had finally kind of looked at me and acknowledged me, my physical presence, and said, Madam, aap ghabraiye mat. You can think of this as making dal. And
Okay.
I was stunned, I was stunned because I had never faced a stereotype like that in my whole life up until then. And
Right.
I think it was the first realization that it is different to be a woman in the corporate sector when you are in a minority. So there were many little instances like this where there were, just microaggressions, stereotypes to deal with, being the only woman and therefore discomfort with that. Just basic issues like no women's bathrooms in most places that I went to, nobody to really talk to. People would avoid you because they were awkward. Union leaders who didn't know how to deal with a woman HR manager, they couldn't be aggressive. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to be around you. So a lot of things were, I think, abnormal for many others because I was there. And that made things difficult and awkward for me sometimes. But I live to tell those tales and I can joke about them now. So I guess, it's a good thing.
I want to ask you, how did you overcome that? Because, there would be some kind of, awkwardness, or even from, if you are the only person, only girl working in a team of men, then how did you, break the ice?
So it was, I think, a bunch of things. I mean, now when I reflect back on it, one, it certainly took a tremendous amount of resilience. I think the easiest thing to do would have been to quit, right? And to come away and say, listen, I don't want to deal with this.
Right.
But I think the resilience and the desire to prove that I could survive it and I could come out stronger and on top was a very strong, thread. And I discovered that I had that resilience. I don't think it had ever really been tested up until then, right? So I think that's one. The other very crucial thing, I think, is that my own purpose in why I was doing what I was doing and the fact that I wanted to build a successful, solid career where I was making a difference was was a very clear guiding light, I think, for me. So for me, each of these interactions were a challenge and an opportunity to turn things around.
You are a mother, Dia, and you're also an entrepreneur. You work with NGOs. You have a very busy life, if I could say that. How do you balance? How do you balance your life? How is your work life balance?
So, I learned very early on that this word balance is very elusive.
Right.
When I first became a mother, I used to look for balance on a daily basis, right? So if I didn't spend an adequate number of hours with my child and I got late coming from work, I would be ridden with guilt. And I would really struggle with that. until one day I realized, over a period of time, that balance is not a daily goal. You can't have balance or work-life balance on a day-to-day basis. So one thing that I think has happened is, over time, I've realized that you need to take a slightly longer term view of balance and what you're striving for. And I came to the conclusion that if over a week, over a month, over a year, if I'm able to give enough time and quality time to different aspects of my life, motherhood, parents, friends, my husband, work, my own passions, if I'm able to kind of, manage those over slightly longer periods of time and give them adequate attention and time, then that is balance. But on a short term basis, things will swing. So there will be weeks where work pressure is so high that I will not be able to give enough time, let's say, to my children. And that is okay. So I had to first, become okay with it myself. And then what I started doing very actively is to actually bring my stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, I mean my family, my friends, my kids, my husband, into that journey and into that process with me.
My last question to you, Diya, is do you have any advice for people who are just out of college, joining the industry? They have no experience, and obviously, the environment ambience is very different from what you get in college and once you join a corporate. So any advice for Gen Z probably?
So I would say three things that, to my mind are the most crucial, I think, for women starting their careers and who have hopefully a very long runway ahead of them. And I say hopefully because unfortunate reality still is that many women drop out of the workforce at various career stages and life stages. One, I would say, is stay the course and stay resilient and persistent, because there will be the challenges, there will be life changes that will come, whether it's marriage, whether it's motherhood, whether it's caregiving later at the stage at which I am, for parents, for in-laws. I mean, a bulk of the caregiving burden still rests with women, not just in India, but the rest of the world as well. And those are stages where the temptation and the need to give up your career is a very real one. So, one, I would just say is that, mentally prepare yourself for the fact that there are going to be these blips. And your reason for why you want to continue to work and build a career for yourself needs to be very firm and very clear to you to help you stay the course despite those. So that's one that I would say, that think about that early on. Don't hit that stage and then start trying to deal with it, because then it becomes very overwhelming.
Right.
So that's one, I would say, which is the ambition and, your own purpose and vision piece. That's very, very crucial. The second I would say is that we can't do it alone. It's very important to create a support system. And I know from my own younger days that, the fallacy of youth is that I'm very strong, I'm very, clear, I will do this and I know what needs to be done. And then life teaches you that akele nahi hota hai. You need that support system,
Right.
professional and personal. So I would say, one, cultivate the personal support system. Wherever you think there are people in your family, in your friend, in your community who understand your ambition and your need to build for yourself, enlist their support early rather than later, and take that support. Ask for it, don't hesitate. Sometimes people don't volunteer support, you have to ask for it. My experience has been, when you ask, very rarely does it not come. So that's the personal. Similarly, on the professional front, cultivate and nurture relationships which will hold you in good stead in the long run. Mentors at work, people who believe in your potential, who will vouch for you, stand by you when things are difficult. Build and invest in those relationships.
Sure.
And the third part of support system and relationships, I will say, is other women. And this I cannot emphasize it adequately. We all go through phases where we get very caught up in our own lives. Huh? Mera husband, mere bacche, mere parents. And when you're about 30 or 35 is when you suddenly realize that mere friends kahan gaye, which is my other girlfriends. And, everyone's got busy in their own lives. And that's the stage at which, when motherhood, etc., comes in, where you start realizing the value of those, other female friendships and support system. Don't let go of that. Hold on to that, because that's a really important one as you go through, stages in life.
Sure.
So that support system piece, I think, is, really crucial. And the third thing I will say is continue to invest in your own capability. So the one way of overcoming any challenges and stereotypes and loss of opportunity, etc., is to ensure that you are really good at what you do professionally. Don't wait for others to give you those opportunities. Don't wait for your organization to train you for things to happen. Take that in your own hand. So three things I would say. One is be very clear about your own ambition and vision. That will keep you on the journey, and when you feel like quitting, which will still keep you in. Build your support system, professional and personal, and other women, very, very crucial. And third, is this whole thing of just investing in your own capability and ensuring that you're really on top of your game and good at what you do, because it will keep you there and it will keep you, fulfilled.
I think Diya, you nailed it. Very very clear views and thoughts. I'm sure people who are watching the show will get a lot of encouragement, and they will be able to see clearly, because some of the younger generation people who are just out of college, they are sometimes lost. That okay, I've joined here, but I don't know which way to go. So very nice. Thank you so much for being on the show, Diya. That was Diya Kapur Mishra. Thank you for watching us.